Judge Jackson had given a speech at a law school where she described how sentencing involves lots of factors, including critical race theory. So she'd laid it out as part of presumably the job of a judge in imposing sentences. So I started off by asking her, what is critical race theory? And her initial response was essentially, I have no idea.
Well, critical race theory also began at the law school that the two of you went to.
That's exactly right. It was born at Harvard Law School. It grew out of Harvard Law School. It grew out of critical legal theory, which came from Harvard Law School, and that in turn was a Marxist movement. She knew all that. She just didn't want to admit it. And so her answer was, well, that has nothing to do with my job as a judge. At which point I turned to her quote that she apparently had forgotten about, where she said, sentencing involves lots of things, including critical race theory. And I said, well, can you explain to us? Apparently you think it's relevant to your job, so tell us what it means. And again, she just kind of dodged and said, well, it's not relevant to my job as a judge. It's a policy question in sentencing that critical race theory is relevant to. And I said, okay, well, that's fine. In addition to serving as a judge, you were the vice chairman of the Sentencing Commission, which sets sentencing policy. So, okay, if you're saying it was one of the jobs you had versus the other that it was relevant to, then tell us how it was relevant to that job. She completely dodged, refused to answer the question. At which point, we had an interesting discussion because Judge Jackson is on the board of trustees of a private school here in Washington, D.C. that's called Georgetown Day School. And it is a wildly liberal school. She is on the board of trustees, and she had said in the school magazine, and I read the quote at the hearing, I don't have it in front of me, but she said something to the effect of, I love Georgetown Day School, and I love their progressive policies and commitment to social justice. And she said, so I asked her, okay, so you love that about the school, you're on their board. And by the way, Amy Coney Barrett was asked extensively about being on the board of a private school. So this was, the Democrats and the press thought it was fair game when she was nominated. And I asked her, what do you mean by social justice? And she filibustered for a while about segregated schools, and the school was founded to integrate and not to discriminate. And I was like, okay, look, that's great. We all agree that discrimination is wrong. I mean, we're all on the same page there. But I asked her, I said, is critical race theory taught in schools? Is it taught in K through 12 schools? Democrats in the press have repeated ad nauseum, it is taught nowhere.
My understanding is that critical race theory is it is an academic theory that is about the ways in which race interacts with various institutions. It doesn't come up in my work as a judge. It's never something that I've studied or relied on, and it wouldn't be something that I would rely on if I was on the Supreme Court. Well,
the school she's on the board of teaches critical race theory at every damn grade from pre-K all the way to 12th grade. And so we spent quite a while walking through some of the specifics of that.
I'm also a little bit confused about her stance because she's saying critical race theory is a really good thing, and I don't know what it is, and it's not being taught anywhere. I think it may have been in the same speech to the University of Michigan Law School, may have been in other speeches, she's expressed admiration for Derek Bell, who's one of the founders of critical race theory. So this is, I think, exposing that she knows a thing or two about it. If you know who Derek Bell is, if you know who Kimberly Crenshaw is, then you know something about the intellectual origins of it. And even beyond that, she's expressed admiration for the 1619 Project by Nicole Hannah-Jones, a completely made-up thesis that the American Revolution was fought to defend the institution of slavery, peddled in the New York Times. Even the Times had to admit eventually that it was bogus. This would be a sort of derivation of critical race theory. So it seems to me like the evidence is there. She knows what this is. So is she a liar?
Well, I actually asked her exactly what you're saying. I said, look, you gave another speech at a law school where you were praising the 1619 Project and praising Nicole Hannah-Jones. the 1619 Project was revisionist history. It is wildly dishonest. It has been denounced by multiple respected historians, so much so, as you noted, that the New York Times had to rescind the central thesis, which was that a principal reason that the colonies fought the Revolution was to defend slavery. That's nonsense. It's garbage. It's false. I asked her if she agreed with that proposition. She wouldn't answer. I asked her if she was aware that it had been roundly condemned and the New York Times had withdrawn it. She said, nope, didn't know that. So she just pleaded complete unawareness.